Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. I would not have picked him to be their father. That is the sentence that walked out of my mouth. No warning, no plan, just there on the table. My name is Erin, I am 34, and I watched my best friend freeze with a fry halfway to her mouth. Her eyes jumped from me to my kids and back again. I remember thinking, way too late, that I should have swallowed those words instead. The twins were beside me in the booth, arguing over a tablet. My son dropped his cup and started whining for more soda. Across the aisle, my husband was at the counter, talking to the cashier, laughing at something on his phone. My friend Mia leaned closer until I could feel her breath. "Tell me you are just tired and venting," she whispered, and there was a tiny crack in her voice. "I am tired," I said, and my hands shook around my straw. I tried to smirk, tried to make it sound casual, like the kind of dark joke moms throw around. "It came out weird, forget it," I added, but even I heard the lie. Mia did not look away from my face, not even once. She knew me too well to let it slide as a harmless joke. "You just said you would not have chosen your husband for this," she said slowly. Her fingers tapped the table, short, nervous taps that kept speeding up. "You mean that? I can see it all over you." Hearing my own thought translated out loud made my chest clench. I wanted to deny it, and I also wanted to finally tell someone everything. I shrugged instead, the weakest move possible. "The kids are great, I would choose them every time." I forced a smile toward the booth where they fought over ketchup. "Just not him, you know, if things were different," I murmured, and even that small half-truth burned. Mia blinked, like she had just walked into a conversation already on fire. "What does 'if things were different' mean?" she asked. She pushed her tray away, appetite gone, attention locked onto me. "This is not like complaining he never does the dishes," she went on. "You are talking about the father of your actual children right there." Her hand tilted her head toward the twins, who were now smearing sauce on napkins. I followed her gaze, and something heavy twisted in my stomach. The twins were loud and sticky and perfect in that weird little kid way. My husband carried a tray back toward us, looking relaxed, humming some tune under his breath. He set the food down and kissed the top of my head on autopilot. I flinched so fast he noticed, and that tiny flinch was another match on the pile. "You okay?" he asked, eyes narrowing just a little. "Yeah, just spilled some thoughts I probably should not have," I said. My voice sounded normal enough, but my pulse hammered in my ears. He glanced between me and Mia, reading the tension like a headline. "Everything good here?" he asked her, but his shoulders had already tightened. "Girl talk," Mia answered, forcing a bright smile he did not buy. He snorted under his breath and slid into the booth across from us. "Dangerous territory," he joked and grabbed a burger. The twins yelled about fries and sauce and whose drink was bigger. On the outside, we looked like any other family lunch, which somehow made the whole thing worse. The normal noise gave me cover, but it also trapped me. I could not take the sentence back with him sitting right there. He had not heard it, at least not the exact wording, but the air around us felt wrong now. Mia kept shifting her gaze between us like she was seeing a glitch in the picture. I knew this would not stay inside this booth forever. "I am serious, Erin," Mia said once he turned to help our son. Her voice dropped low, almost lost under the clatter and kid chaos. "What did you mean, not as the father of your kids? That is huge." I pressed my nails into my palm until it hurt. "I meant I did not actually choose," I said, and my throat went tight on the last word. She frowned, eyes narrowing as she tried to parse that. "You married him, you had kids with him, that is choosing," she replied. If only it felt that simple inside my head. I stared at the straw wrapper on the table, twisting it until it tore. "Sometimes it feels more like I picked the only open door," I said, and there it was, another piece slipped out. My husband wiped a smear of sauce off our daughter's face and laughed at something she said. He really did look happy in that moment, and I hated myself for noticing. There he was, the man who tucked them in and paid daycare and complained about being tired just as loudly as I did. There I was, wondering out loud if I would have wanted someone else to father them. Even thinking it made me feel like the villain in my own life. "If he heard you say that, he would lose his mind," Mia muttered. She checked over my shoulder, nervous, like he might suddenly stand behind us. "He will not," I said quickly, too quickly, almost daring fate with that line. My stomach dropped right after I said it, like my body knew better. I had no clue yet how wrong I was about that. Mia leaned back a little, giving me space to keep going. She always did that, left a silence where truth could land. "You said if I had and then you stopped," she reminded me. Her memory caught the exact shape of my unfinished thought and put it back on the table. "What were you about to say there?" she asked. "If you had a what?" I felt my face heat up, even thinking the rest of that sentence. The words sat right behind my teeth, heavy and ugly and honest. "If I had a real choice," I said finally, and my voice came out thin. Not the full thing, not yet, just that vague, safe version. Even that tiny slice made Mia's fingers curl around her cup like she needed to hold onto something. "A real choice how?" she asked, barely moving her lips. I shook my head and reached for a napkin I did not need. "This is not chapter 1 of a divorce speech," I muttered, aiming for a joke and missing. "I am not leaving him, I just would not have built this exact life if more options were on the table." Hearing myself say that out loud scared me more than her questions. Our son kicked my leg by accident and giggled, unaware of anything. My husband told him to sit still, then shot me a quick look. "You seem off today," he said, biting into his burger. I forced a shrug and took a sip of my drink to stall. If I opened my mouth without something in it, more truth would fall out. "I did not sleep much," I said, which was technically true. "Kids were up, brain would not shut down, usual stuff." He accepted that with a grunt and turned back to the twins. Mia raised one eyebrow at me over her cup. She knew there was more, and she was not about to drop it. "Text me later," she mouthed, silent but clear. Her eyes said the rest. This conversation was not finished. I nodded, feeling the weight of that future talk settle onto my shoulders. Some part of me was relieved, because keeping everything inside had been eating me alive. Another part wanted to grab my words out of the air and swallow them whole. Looking back now, I can see the exact fork in the road. I could have laughed it off, called myself dramatic, changed the subject. I could have told Mia it was just mom rage and swallowed my real answer. Instead, I let that one sentence stand between the fries and the kids' drinks. I would not have picked him to be their father, just sat there like a loaded weapon. At that table, it still felt semi-contained. Just me, my best friend, my scattered family, the mess of a normal weekend meal. I thought I could control where my words traveled and how far. I thought this scene would stay small, just another venting session between moms. I had no idea yet that I had just lit the fuse. The doctor rolled closer, chair wheels scratching the floor. Her hands folded on the folder like she was holding it back. "Do you want the numbers or the simple version?" she asked, and I already knew neither would feel simple. I laughed once, way too loud for that tiny room. "Just tell me straight," I answered, and my stomach clenched for impact. She turned the folder toward me and tapped a page. "There is a significant drop in ovarian reserve." Her voice stayed calm while mine died. "Pregnancy could still happen, but the odds are lower than average for your age." She paused, then added that ugly little phrase. "If you want children, sooner is better." I stared at the page like it might rearrange itself. The numbers meant nothing to me, but her tone did. In that moment, I did not hear science, I heard a countdown. My throat burned and my hands went cold. I nodded like I was at a normal appointment, while something caved in. "Any questions?" she asked, and the clock ticked too loud. I tried to form a sentence that was not just screaming. "Is this my fault?" slipped out before I could stop it. She shook her head and launched into words like genetics and probability. I heard only the answer I gave myself, which was yes. She moved on to treatment options like she was reading a menu. There were medications, monitoring, maybe assisted reproduction if things did not improve. "It can be successful, but it is often expensive," she added, and that was the line that stuck. Not the diagnosis, not the low chances that my future kids were suddenly tied to a price tag. I walked out with a stack of papers clamped under my arm. Outside, I leaned against my car and dialed his number with shaking fingers. He picked up on the second ring and sounded cheerful. "Hey, did you survive the appointment?" he asked, like we were joking about a dentist visit. My voice cracked on the first word. It is bad, I managed, pressing my forehead against the window. The doctor thinks time is not on my side at all. Silence hit for a few seconds, then his breathing slowed down. Okay, so what are the options? He asked, and his tone shifted into project mode. That first swig. It should have told me everything. I read off the paper, stumbling over the medical language. He interrupted with questions about success rates and cost brackets. Find out what insurance can cover, he said, already planning. I will look into my benefits tonight, we will figure it out. Those words felt like a rope thrown to someone drowning. That night I sat at his kitchen table while his laptop glowed. He scrolled through his employee portal with focused intensity. Your plan barely touches this stuff, he muttered, eyes on the screen. These drugs are brutal out of pocket, but my plan has some coverage. He tapped with quick, sharp movements, like he was playing a game he expected to win. I sat with my hands wrapped around a mug I forgot to drink. My brain was still at the clinic, stuck on the phrase low reserve. He was already 3 steps ahead, comparing deductibles and networks. If you were on my insurance, this looks doable, he said, turning the laptop toward me. I remember the word doable landing harder than the diagnosis. I tried to keep my voice steady while I asked the obvious thing. What would that even look like, me on your plan? He leaned back, eyes narrowing as the math arranged itself for him. Well, we would need to be married for the best coverage window, he answered, like we were talking about a gym membership. My heart lurched, not from romance, from logistics. He must have seen my face because he reached for my hand. Hey, I am not saying ring for benefits only, he added with a quick half smile. I love you, I always thought this was where we were headed. His thumb brushed my knuckles while the laptop screen reflected in his eyes. It just makes sense to fast track it now. Here is the part that still twists my stomach when I replay it. He did not drop to one knee, he opened a spreadsheet. He showed me columns of projected costs with and without his coverage. This is the difference between maybe trying and actually doing it, he said, tapping the totals. I want us to actually do it. If you have ever wanted something so badly it hurt, you know that moment. The part of you that wants the dream starts overriding everything else. I heard numbers and timelines and clinic names, and all I could see was a future crib. I told myself this was practical, even responsible, 2 grown adults planning ahead. I pushed down the tiny voice asking if the timing was really mine. We scheduled more appointments, this time at a fertility clinic. He came to the intake visit with a folder of printouts. He answered half the questions before I could open my mouth. When the nurse went over medication schedules, his pen flew across the page. I sat there in the gown, feeling like the subject instead of the lead. On the drive home, he laid out the plan again. We start treatment as soon as the insurance change kicks in, he said, one hand on the wheel. That means we need paperwork done by next month, which is tight but possible. He listed tasks like picking a date, merging finances, moving my stuff. Every item was tied to the phrase, if we want the best chance. I kept nodding until my neck hurt. At one red light, he glanced over and studied my face. You are quiet, he observed, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. I do not want you to feel pushed, I just do not want to waste time either. That is how control sounded coming out of someone who thought he was helping. I tried to put my own doubts into words and failed. It is just a lot all at once, I said, staring out the window. I thought I would have more time to decide on everything like this. He exhaled and tightened his grip on the wheel. Your body kind of decided for you, we are just adapting. That line hit harder than anything the doctor had said. In his mind, this was simple, there was a problem and he had a fix. In my mind, something private had been turned into a group project with rules. I knew he did care, at least on his version of caring. I also knew the walls of my life were starting to move without my permission. The first injection night made all of that real fast. He laid out the syringe and alcohol swab with almost military focus. Let us get this done, then we can watch something, he said, trying to keep it light. I lifted my shirt and pinched my skin while my hands trembled. He watched the clock, timing it exactly with the schedule the nurse had written. When the needle went in, I gasped and bit down on a curse. Tears sprang up before I could stop them. It is okay, this means we are really in it now, he said, smoothing the paper on the counter. He kissed my forehead and checked off a box on the schedule. I felt like I had just signed a contract with my own blood. Over the next weeks, my body reacted in all the lovely ways they warn you about. I bloated, my mood swung, my sleep shattered. He tracked every appointment, every refill, every payment. He joked about being the project manager of Operation Baby. I laughed along while a quiet dread grew in the background. One evening, after another monitoring visit, we sat surrounded by bills. He sorted them into piles and pointed at the totals. "I am putting a lot into this, time and money and stress," he said, not unkind but not softly either. "I need to know you are all in with me, not halfway in and halfway somewhere else." The somewhere else was not a place, it was a life where I had more room. I rushed to reassure him because that is what I did. "Of course I am in, I want this more than anything," I said, and that part was true. I wanted a child, I wanted to beat the odds the doctor laid out. I wrapped my arms around him and thanked him for stepping up. Inside, another tiny piece of me curled up around the feeling of debt. Looking back, that is where the sentence I dropped on Mia began. Not at the restaurant table with ketchup and noise. It started in that exam room, with a calm voice telling me that time was not my friend. It grew every time he pulled out numbers instead of asking how I was really doing. By the time the twins arrived, the story of who chose what was already twisted. Mia pressed the plunger down while I stared at the clock. My hips shook on the edge of the couch, breath coming in short bursts. "Do it fast," I muttered, fingers clawed in the blanket. She counted under her breath and pushed the medication in. I clenched my jaw so I would not scream and scare myself. When it was done, my legs went weak. Mia dropped the used syringe in the container and blew out a breath. "You okay?" she asked, rubbing a circle on my back. I nodded, even though my vision had gone fuzzy for a second. "That one burned," I whispered, and my throat tasted like metal. My phone chimed on the table. He had sent a picture of his drink with a caption. "How is the science stuff going?" the message read, followed by a laughing emoji. Mia saw it flash on the screen, and her eyebrows shot up. I snatched the phone before she could say something sharp. "He is just trying to keep it light," I said, forcing a chuckle. My laughter came out thin and strange. Mia folded her arms and leaned back, watching me cover for him. "Sure," she replied, slow, like she was still weighing the words. "If this is light, I do not want to see him serious." I wanted to defend him, I really did. He had offered to give the injection, but a last-minute meeting popped up. Mia had driven over straight from work, still in her scrubs. She did not complain once, even when traffic trapped her for an hour. Meanwhile, I kept repeating that he was stressed too, like a script. "Did you tell him it hurts this much?" she asked, eyes soft but steady. I shrugged and fiddled with the corner of the blanket. "He knows the basics, I do not want to freak him out," I said. In reality, I did not want to hear him turn pain into another bullet point. Mia watched me for a long moment, lips pressed together. "You are allowed to freak him out," she finally said, voice low. "That is part of loving someone through this." The sentence landed like a hit I pretended I did not feel. I smiled and changed the subject to TV and snacks. She let it go, but only on the surface. A few weeks later, she sat beside me in the dark exam room. He had texted that his boss pulled him into an urgent call. "I will join by video if they let me," his message said, as if that counted. The ultrasound tech squeezed gel onto my abdomen, and my heart pounded hard. Mia grabbed my hand before I even asked. "You ready?" the tech asked, eyes on the screen. "I think so," I answered, which was half a lie. The wand moved, the monitor flickered, and then that sound filled the room. I did not expect it to hit me that hard. Mia's breath hitched at the same time mine did. "There we go," the tech murmured. "One heartbeat and another, looks like two." I stared at her, then at the monitor, then back again. Mia squeezed my hand so tight my fingers tingled. "Holy crap," she whispered, eyes wide, and a tear slid down my cheek. "Do." The room spun for a second, then snapped into sharp focus. My brain jumped to cribs, feedings, bills, appointments, everything doubled. I laughed and cried at the same time, a choking sound. Mia laughed with me, then covered her mouth as more tears spilled. "Do you want me to call him?" she asked, wiping her face with her sleeve. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. She dialed and put it on speaker, the phone resting on my chest. He picked up on the second ring, breathing a little fast. Well, he asked, what did they say? Mia stared at me for a beat, then turned her head. Get ready, she said, a shaky grin in her voice. It is not just one. There was a pause long enough for my heart to flip. You are kidding, he finally answered, tone impossible to read. No joke, Mia said, glancing at me. 2 heartbeats, 2 little ones in there. Silence again. Then a sharp exhale, not quite a laugh. Okay, wow, that is going to be intense, he answered, and the word intense stuck under my skin. He asked a few rapid questions about measurements and risk. Mia relayed what the tech had said in quick bursts. He did not ask how I was doing until the very end. You okay over there? His voice came through the speaker, slightly distant. I swallowed and said I was, even though my brain was buzzing. After we hung up, Mia turned toward me. How do you feel? She asked, not about numbers, about me. The question broke something open. I am terrified and thrilled and I might puke, I blurted out. She laughed through her tears, nodding like she felt every word with me. In the parking lot, she popped the trunk and yanked out a box. I grabbed this on the way, she said, cheeks flushed. Inside were tiny matching onesies with goofy slogans. I figured if it went well, we would need something to scream into. We both lost it then, laughing so hard people stared. On the drive home, she kept watching me at stoplights. You keep zoning out, she said softly. I am doing math, I admitted, stomach tight. 2 cribs, double daycare, double everything, and I already feel like a walking pincushion. She tapped the steering wheel, then glanced at me again. You know he is going to lean into money talk now, she said. That is how he handles stress. I nodded because we both knew his patterns. He is also the one making this possible, I added quickly, like I needed to balance the scale. Mia did not argue, but her jaw set in that way it does when she disagrees. Fast forward to delivery day, and you will see her again. The room was chaos, alarms chirping while people rushed around. One baby came out crying and sturdy, the other a little slower. I heard whispers and felt my chest tighten. For a second, all sound dropped away except my own breathing. When they finally placed both babies in my arms, my whole body shook. Mia hovered near the door, eyes red, hands clasped so tight her knuckles blanched. He stood by the nurses, firing off questions about weights and charts. I watched him point, organize, confirm details. Mia watched me instead, watching my face, reading every twitch. Later that night, after everyone left, the crash hit. My body ached in places I did not know could hurt. I bled through my gown and rang for help with trembling fingers. A nurse cleaned everything up and told me to rest. When she left, the room felt too big and too quiet. My phone buzzed on the tray. Mia again. How are you doing, really? Her message read, the last word underlined in my mind. I stared at the empty spot where he should have been. He had gone home to grab a shower and some real food hours earlier. I typed and erased 3 different answers. Finally, I wrote, I feel like I got hit by a truck, and then handed 2 miracles. She replied almost instantly. I am coming in the morning before work, she wrote. Text me if you need me sooner, I mean it. The next day she slipped into the room before visiting hours fully started. Her hair was pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. She scooped up my daughter without asking and rocked gently. You look wiped, she said, scanning my face. I am proud of you and also a little scared for you. I tried to joke about the lack of sleep and the food. She cut through it with one sharp look. Where is he? She asked, glancing at the empty chair. At home, I answered, adjusting my son on my chest. He was exhausted, he needed rest. Her eyebrows rose a fraction. So you almost tore in half and stayed alone all night, but he was the one who needed sleep, she said, voice light but edged. I felt my cheeks burn. It is just one night, I argued. He will be here later with stuff from home. He should have been here when you buzzed that nurse, Mia murmured, leaning down to kiss my daughter's head. He should have seen you like that. I wanted to disagree, but the memory of blood and shaking hands flashed back. Instead, I adjusted the blanket and looked away. If I met her eyes, I was going to cry again. Once we got home, the real marathon started. Feedings blurred into each other, my body barely catching up. He returned to work faster than I expected, saying we needed the paycheck. Mia started dropping by on her lunch breaks, arms full of whatever we had run out of. She was the one who saw the gap between the image and the reality. One afternoon, she walked in to find me in the hallway, clutching a screaming baby. My shirt was stained, my hair stuck to my face. He was in the living room, headphones on, laptop open. "Conference call," he mouthed when our eyes met, then turned back to the screen. Mia set her bag down and took the baby from my arms. "Go drink water," she ordered, shifting the baby to her shoulder. "You are shaking." I had not even noticed until she said it. My hands tremble. And as I turned on the faucet. Behind me, the wailing faded as she paced and hummed under her breath. He wrapped up his call and wandered in, stretching. "Man, that client will not stop talking," he complained, rolling his neck. He kissed the baby's head and dropped a quick pat on my shoulder. "You too good?" he asked, already glancing toward the kitchen. Mia's eyes followed him, her jaw tight. "We are surviving," she replied, voice flat. He did not catch the tone or pretended not to. "I have to go to the gym later," he added. "If I skip too many days, I will fall off the wagon." He grabbed his shaker bottle like it was a medal. My stomach twisted at the thought of him leaving again that evening. Mia watched my face and folded her arms. "When are you going?" she asked, sounding way too casual. "In an hour or so," he answered. "Once the kids are down so she can rest." "That is not how resting works," Mia muttered as soon as he left the room. I shot her a warning glare, but she pressed on. "He gets to run off stress, you get to hold it together." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache bloom. "If I complain, I sound ungrateful," I whispered. One night, a few months in, he posted a selfie from the gym locker room. Caption: "No dad bod here, staying ahead of the curve." I saw it while burping one baby and bouncing the other with my knee. Mia saw it too because my phone lit up with her message a second later. "You doing okay with that post?" she wrote, and the screen blurred. I could have ignored it. Instead, I sent her a picture of myself, hair wild, shirt stained again. Under it I typed, "This is the other side of his no dad bod plan." She called me immediately, not even bothering with more texts. Her voice came through loud, angry and worried at the same time. "I know he is not a monster," she started, cutting through my half-formed defenses. "He loves them in his own organized, scheduled way." I let out a bitter little laugh. "He does," I answered. "He reads bedtime stories when he is here, he pays for everything, he keeps this whole machine running." "And yet I am hearing you crack," she replied softly. "Every time we talk, you sound more worn down." She was right, and I hated that she was right. "I am just adjusting," I mumbled. "Twins are not a small thing, this is normal." A year later, she stood in my kitchen during another meltdown night. One kid was sick, the other climbing onto every surface. He had texted that a work outing ran long, then sent a picture of a bar. I stared at the image for a full minute before locking the phone. Mia wiped my son's face and watched my expression shift. "What did he send?" she asked, holding out her hand. I handed over the phone because I was too tired to lie. She studied the photo and her mouth pressed into a line. "You okay with this?" she asked quietly. My chest felt heavy, like something had settled there for good. "I get it," I muttered. "He needs to decompress, he brings in the stable money, he is under pressure." I heard myself repeating his favorite lines and wanted to bite my tongue. Mia set the phone on the counter and stepped closer. "And you?" she asked, "when do you get to decompress?" I did not have an answer. I moved past her to wipe the table, anything to stay busy. She grabbed my wrist lightly and made me look at her. "You keep telling me he is the reason you have these kids," she said. "But I keep seeing you carry the hardest parts while he takes victory laps." That sentence stuck in my brain like a splinter. At the time, I brushed her off. "You are only seeing the worst days," I argued, pulling my hand back. "He does plenty, I am just venting to you because you are safe." She nodded, but her eyes stayed sad. Here is the thing about having a friend inside your life like that. They remember what you do not want to admit later. Every injection she gave, every late-night call, every visit with groceries became her evidence file. Not because she planned to use it against me. Because she loved me enough to actually notice. When I finally dropped that line at the restaurant, she did not hear it in a vacuum. She heard it layered on top of needle nights, empty chairs in hospital rooms, gym selfies, and bar pictures. She heard the girl who used to dream about a soft, steady partner now describing a manager with a family brand. She also heard the guilty part of me that still defended him while bleeding out emotionally. That is why her face changed so fast. Back then I thought she was just shocked by the sentence. Now I know she was hearing every moment she had already witnessed crashing together. She had watched me thank him for being supportive while she changed crib sheets beside me. She watched him list his sacrifices like bullet points while I whispered mine into the phone at midnight. So when I admitted I would not have chosen him if I had a true option, she knew I was not being dramatic. Yes. He was the friend who saw it all. The injections, the hospital nights, the gym posts, the conference calls over screaming babies. She saw what I would not let myself name for years. That I had not really picked a partner for fatherhood. I had signed a contract with a man who knew my body was on a timer and built a life around that leverage. He shut the front door hard enough that a picture rattled. "Say it again," he called from the entryway, voice sharp and steady. I froze halfway through cutting grapes for the twins. My hands went still, knife hovering over the board. In my chest, everything dropped at once. He walked into the kitchen with his phone in his hand. "Say the sentence you told Mia at lunch," he said, setting the phone down. The twins sat at the table, swinging their legs, watching him. I wiped my palms on a towel to buy a second. "Which sentence?" I asked, already knowing exactly which one. His jaw clenched and he tapped the screen once. "I would not have chosen my husband as the father of my children," he recited slowly. He held each word like it tasted bad in his mouth. "Ring a bell?" he asked, eyes locked on mine. My throat went dry and the room felt smaller. My son's fork hit his plate with a clatter. "Mom, are we in trouble?" he whispered, glancing between us. "No, you are fine, finish your food," I answered, forcing my voice gentle. My husband did not look away from me for a second. Even the kids could feel the charge in the air. "Where did you hear that?" I asked, though I already knew. He lifted the phone again and waved it slightly. "I just got off a call," he said, pacing 2 steps then back. Mia was upset. She wanted to clarify some things before I heard them elsewhere. He did little air quotes around clarify and elsewhere, like they tasted sour. I pictured Mia pacing in her own place, phone pressed to her ear. Of course she would not sit with that sentence alone. Of course she would try to clean it up before it blew up my life. "That is not exactly how I said it," I started, voice shaking. He raised an eyebrow and my explanation died on my tongue. "Do not play word games with me right now," he cut in, palms slamming the counter. "You said you would not have picked me for this role if you had a choice." Every syllable landed like a separate hit. The twins stiffened and stared, forks hovering midair. I felt sweat bead at the back of my neck. I was venting, I tried, fingers digging into the towel. It came out harsher than I meant it. He laughed once, a short dry sound with no humor. "So there is a softer version where I am still not your preferred father for them?" he asked. My stomach twisted because he was not wrong. "Maybe we should talk later," I murmured, glancing toward the kids. "After bedtime." He turned to them with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. "Finish your dinner in the living room," he told them. "TV time, go ahead and keep the volume low." They scrambled off their chairs, clutching their plates with wide eyes. Our daughter paused at the doorway and looked back at me. "Are you and Daddy mad at each other?" she whispered. "We are just having a grown-up talk," I answered, forcing my lips to move. She nodded slowly and slipped out of the room. As soon as they were gone, he rounded on me. "A grown-up talk where you explain why the woman who held your hand through treatment thinks I trapped you," he said, voice low now. That was her word, by the way, trapped. My chest squeezed so tight I had to grab the counter edge. I could almost see Mia's side of that call. "I never used that word with her," I said, which was technically true. She connected some dots she has seen over the years. "Dots?" he echoed, stepping closer. "Let us list a few, since we are doing geometry now." His hands counted off invisible points in the air. "I worked extra hours to cover those appointments," he started, fingers ticking up. "I shifted my benefits plan and took the hit on my paycheck. I sat through consults and heard doctors tell us how low your chances were. I watched you inject yourself and pretended it did not scare me half to death." His voice rose on that last line and cracked a little. I know you did things for us, I said, heat rising in my face. I have never denied that. You denied something else when you told your best friend you would never pick me as their parent, he shot back. So which part is real, the gratitude you throw at me when you want something, or that sentence? The word gratitude came out like an accusation. I was talking about circumstances, I insisted, words rushing. How everything happened so fast, how much pressure there was, how. He cut me off with a sharp gesture. Do not blame the clock, do not blame biology, look at me, he demanded. I need to know if you believe what you said. The room went quiet enough for the TV in the next room to seep through. Cartoon voices flow. Aided in, completely wrong for this moment. He stepped close enough that I could see the tiny twitch in his cheek. Do you wish you had done all of this with someone else? He asked. He did not blink while he waited. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. My brain split down the middle. On one side were the twins, their faces, their little habits, everything I loved. On the other side was the man in front of me who had tied himself to my broken odds. Any answer felt like betrayal of someone. When I said that I was thinking about the way things started, I managed finally. How much of it felt like survival instead of choice? His eyes narrowed just a fraction. So yes, he said slowly, you would have shopped around for a different dad if your numbers were fine. The way he said shopped around made me flinch. I am not talking about them not existing, I blurted out. I cannot even imagine my life without them, that is not what this is. He snorted under his breath and ran a hand through his hair. You cannot separate them from me, I am woven into how they got here, he said. That is the part you apparently resent. I resent feeling like my body forced my hand, I snapped louder than I meant. I resent feeling like I had to race into everything because there was a countdown hanging over my head. His lips curled slightly. And I resent being turned into the villain for volunteering to stand next to you under that countdown, he answered. We both did math, you just hate the answer now. My pulse hammered against my ribs. You did not just volunteer, I said quietly. You also set terms. His head jerked back like I had slapped him. I set structure because chaos does not pay bills or fund treatments, he replied, fingers tapping the counter again. I swallowed hard and stared at the floor for a second. He took that silence as admission of something. Here is what I hear when you say that to her, he went on. I hear that every time I swallowed fear and kept going, you were secretly measuring me against some imaginary perfect partner. His voice shook for the first time, and it hit me harder than the anger. I was not measuring you against some fantasy, I said, feeling tears burn. I was finally saying out loud that I never got to slow down and ask if we were actually right together beyond the crisis. He leaned both hands on the counter and lowered his head. How many years later do you get to decide that? He murmured. How many birthdays and holidays and parent-teacher nights before you admit you chose this? In the living room, our son laughed at something on the screen. The sound sliced through the argument like a knife. He straightened and jabbed a finger toward the doorway. You know who did not choose anything, he said. Those two, they just arrived and trusted we were a solid team. The guilt hit so hard my knees wobbled. I am not planning to blow their world up, I whispered. You already cracked it today when you threw that line into the universe, he replied, picking up his phone. If Mia knows, other people will know, and eventually it reaches them. He stared at a screen like it had betrayed him. She did not mean to hurt you, I tried, reaching out. He stepped back out of reach. She meant to protect you, which tells me she has heard a lot more than that one sentence, he said. How long have you been telling her that I am basically the wrong man in the right role? His voice dropped to a rough whisper on the last part. I do not sit around trashing you, I shot back, stung. I vent about being overwhelmed, about feeling alone in certain moments. That is what friends are for. And when you paint yourself as alone, where am I in that picture? He asked. Just a bank account and a last name. I opened my mouth and closed it again because I did not like the answer. He paced away, then back, like he could not decide where to put his anger. I need clarity, he said finally, stopping right in front of me. Not vague talk about pressure or speed or fate. He took a breath, steadying himself. Do you regret marrying me, yes or no? The question hung there, heavy and impossible. I heard dishes clink in the sink, a cartoon theme song, my own heartbeat. Every instinct told me to smooth it over and lie. Smile, say no, say of course not, say I just misspoke at lunch. Instead I stalled, and that silence answered for me. His shoulders sagged slightly at my hesitation. Okay, he said, voice suddenly flat. That tells me more than a speech ever could. He walked to the kitchen doorway and called to the twins. TV off, time for bath, he announced, sounding almost normal again. They scrambled in, still laughing, unaware of what had just passed. He lifted our daughter and spun her once, pasted smile locked in place. My son grabbed my hand and tugged. Are you taking us to the park tomorrow? He asked, wide-eyed. My throat closed up and I would not answer right away. Maybe, I croaked, finally forcing sound out. We will see how tomorrow looks. He shot me a quick side glance over our daughter's shoulder. That is where we are now, he muttered under his breath. Everything depends on how it looks after you decide whether I was a mistake. Later, when the kids were in bed, the house felt too quiet. He stood by the bedroom door with his arms folded. We need to fix this or end it, he said. I am not living in a home where my partner secretly wishes she had built it with someone else. The choice landed between us like a loaded coin, still spinning. I need you to get in the car. That is how I opened with Mia after the fight. No greeting, no small talk, just that one line over the phone. She did not ask many questions, just asked which parking lot. 20 minutes later, she pulled in beside me and killed the engine. I was already sitting in my own car, hands clenched on the wheel. My cheeks still felt hot from the argument at home. The house was quiet when I left, but it was not calm. I watched her walk over and slide into the passenger seat. She shut the door with a soft click that sounded too loud. Okay, she said, eyes scanning my face. Are you safe? Are the kids safe? They are fine, I answered, voice rough. He is putting them to bed like a model parent. The words tasted bitter as soon as I heard them. She sank back in the seat and waited. I stared through the windshield, heart thudding in my throat. He knows what I said, I finally got out. Your phone call did not stay in the clarify zone. Her shoulders flinched and she sucked in a breath. I tried to soften it, she rushed out. I panicked when you left the restaurant looking like that. I thought if he heard it from me, I could context it. The guilt in her voice punched straight through my anger. I know, I said, pinching the bridge of my nose hard. Silence sat between us for a moment. Mia twisted the strap on her bag, eyes fixed on her hands. He repeated the sentence back to me word for word, I said. Like he had practiced it on the drive home. Then he asked if I ever meant our marriage at all. Her head snapped up. What did you tell him? She asked, watching every twitch in my face. I did not answer fast enough, which was basically an answer, I admitted. You know that awful pause where your brain screams and your mouth stalls. Yeah, that one, I added, letting my head thump back against the headrest. Mia swore under her breath and stared out at the empty lot. This started way before one lunch, she said quietly. You have been hinting around the same wound for years. I gave a short, humorless laugh that scraped my throat. Then let me stop hinting, I said, hands shaking again. You told him I said I felt cornered, I went on. That I never got a real say once my labs came back. She nodded slowly, remembering her own words. What I have never told you is the paperwork behind that corner, I said. That part is uglier than anything I let out today. Her body went still, like she did not want to spook me. Paperwork how? She asked, voice soft but steady. Not the hospital forms, I answered. The contract I signed before we ever walked down an aisle. The one that turned my future into a joint project with rules. Her eyebrows drew together, understanding already forming. You mean a prenup, she said. I nodded once, jaw tight. An agreement that did not exactly scream equal partnership, I added. More like, here is how we keep everything tidy if you break. She exhaled through her teeth and leaned her head back. Walk me through it, she said. Not the summary, the moment. So I did, because hiding it had only ever made me feel more alone. And because once you start tearing the curtain, you do not stop halfway. I told her about the night he brought it up. Not in some fancy office, but at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He slid a folder toward me while stirring his drink with the other hand. I had a consult, he said, sounding casual. Standard thing people in my bracket do before marriage. I remember my stomach tightening when he used that word. Bracket, like he lived in a different tax zoo. He gave a little speech about responsibility and protecting both of us. Divorce gets messy if you do not plan ahead, he said, eyes on the document. This keeps everything clear if things explode later. I flipped through pages I barely understood. There were sections about his retirement accounts and property. There was a brief paragraph about me, mostly about waiving claims. I asked what I would have if it all fell apart. He smiled and tapped the part about a modest settlement. It is generous, he said. You are coming in with debt and shaky health, I am taking more risk. That line stabbed deeper than I let him see. I laughed instead, the worst instinct I have. Nothing says romance, Lee. Key risk assessment, I joked, half choking on the words. He reached across the table and took my hand. Hey, I'm all in on us, he said. But I need to be smart about long-term stuff. Sign this and then we focus on getting you pregnant, no distractions. He squeezed my fingers like it was a comfort, not a bargain. Sitting in the car telling Mia that, my chest burned. I told myself it was normal, I said. People do legal things before marriage, it does not mean they do not care. That is what I kept repeating when my stomach dropped reading those lines. Mia watched me like she wanted to reach through time and shake me. And you still signed, she said quietly, not accusing, just pressing. Yeah, I answered, voice low. I signed in some office with a board assistant watching. No lawyer of my own, just his, because I did not want to make it adversarial. I made little quotes in the air at that last phrase. He kissed me outside the building afterward. You did the adult thing, he told me, arms around my shoulders. Now we can fight the real problem, not future worst-case drama. The real problem was my body, and he knew I believed that. So I went along because the alternative felt like losing everything. In the car, Mia rubbed her forehead. I knew there was a prenup, she said slowly. You mentioned it once like a side note, then shut down faster than a bank vault. I did not know the language inside sounded like a loan application. Her voice shook, then steadied again. That was not even the part that wrecked me most, I admitted. The real hook came later, after we merged everything and I quit my job. Her head snapped toward me. You quit because of his insurance, right? She asked. Not just because you wanted to stay home. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. My position did not offer the coverage we needed, I said. His company plan required me to be on his policy as a dependent. They used that exact word on the form, dependent. I still feel it stamp itself across my forehead. I walked her through that day too. HR forms spread out, my resignation email open on the screen. He stood behind my chair with his hands on my shoulders. This is going to give us real options, he told me. Once the kids are older, you can always jump back in. I hit send on that email and felt my world narrow. All the plans I used to have shrank into a tiny box. I told myself it was temporary, that motherhood would fill the gap. He hugged me and cheered like we had won something. I smiled while my stomach flipped. Mia listened without interrupting, knuckles white on her knees. So your income went to zero, she said. And everything from the clinic to the groceries ran through him. That is when the power imbalance stopped being theoretical. She stated it like a diagnosis I had refused to accept. There is one night I keep replaying in my head, I said. Every time I think about that sentence at lunch, my brain jumps there. Tell me, she urged, leaning closer. So I took a breath and dropped into that memory too. The one where he turned support into a deal. It was late, after another rough appointment. The doctor had found something concerning and wanted extra monitoring. We sat at the table again, his laptop open with bills and charts. I was still in the clothes from the clinic, a bandage on my arm. He pointed at the totals with a tight jaw. This is a lot, he said, tapping a column. I am not backing out, but we need to be on the same page. My heart clenched at the phrase backing out. I held my breath, waiting for the condition. It came right on schedule. I need you to stop talking about moving across the country, he said. No more big career changes, no more school plans for now. We cannot take on this financial storm and also chase your what-ifs. He leaned back and stared at me, waiting for agreement. If I am doing everything I can to fund this, I need stability. I remember staring at him, feeling my face go numb. I did not realize my master's program counted as a storm, I managed. It counts as risk, he answered. If this works, you will be busy with twins or at least one baby. Any student loans on top of that could bury us. He reached across the table again. If you hit pause and let me steer for a while, I will push through anything the clinic throws at us, he said. I will not flinch at another dollar if I know we are walking in one direction, not five. He thought he was selling teamwork. What I heard was, your dream for your life is a luxury item now. Sitting in the parked car, I finally admitted that out loud. I nodded. That night, I told Mia. I agreed to everything because the alternative sounded like losing my shot at kids. I told myself it was fair, he was carrying the expenses, I should carry the sacrifice. The logic sounded thin even as I repeated it. Mia let out a rough laugh that was not amused. So he offered a package deal, she said. Babies plus security in exchange for you shrinking. The words made my eyes sting. That is an ugly way to say it, I muttered, even though it fit. He did not twirl a mustache, I added quickly. He looked scared and determined, he cried at one point, he truly believed he was doing the heroic thing. That almost made it worse because I could not even hate him cleanly. I pressed my thumb into the steering wheel until it hurt. He thought my fertility problem gave him the right to design our life. Mia stared at me, jaw hanging slightly. And you let him, she said, not cruel, just blunt. I did, I answered, because there was no point pretending otherwise. I went along with the prenup, the policy change, the job loss, the abandoned plans. Then I woke up years later wondering why I felt like a guest in my own house. The car felt small and full of all the words I had never spoken. I put my face in my hands for a second. He told me tonight that I am rewriting history, I said. That he only ever tried to give me the family I wanted. He said my body forced both of us into hard choices. Mia shifted in her seat and turned fully toward me. He is not wrong that your lab results changed everything, she said carefully. But who weaponized that panic is a different question. Her gaze stayed steady while mine skittered away. That was the question I had dodged for way too long. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. His name lit up the screen, then went dark when I ignored it. A second later, a text popped in. We need to finish the conversation, do not run to your echo chamber, the message read. I locked the screen like it burned. Mia saw my flinch and winced. Is that what he thinks I am? She asked quietly. Your echo chamber. I sighed and nodded once. He thinks you only feed my dissatisfaction, I said. She looked out through the windshield for a long beat. I have watched you twist yourself into knots to excuse him, she said. I have also watched him list his sacrifices like receipts. I do not think either of you is a cartoon villain. But I think your fear turned him into your gatekeeper. That word hit just right. Gatekeeper, not just partner. The one holding the key to the thing I wanted so badly that I would sign anything. I swallowed hard and felt something inside me finally shift. I was so tired of pretending I had walked into this with equal power. Remember when you asked at the restaurant what I meant, I said. You pushed me on that half sentence, the if I had a part. She nodded, eyes locked on mine. You never finished it, she said. You swallowed the last word like it was poison. Yeah, I whispered. It has been sitting in my throat for years. I took a breath that scraped going in. If I had a normal body, I said, finally forcing the whole thing into the air. I would not have chosen him as the father of my children. The car went dead quiet. Mia did not move, not even a blink at first. I kept talking because if I stopped, I would start apologizing again. If pregnancy had been simple for me, I would have taken longer, I said. I would have watched how a man handled life when he was not holding all the cards. I stared at the dashboard while the words kept tumbling out. I would have looked for someone who did not turn support into leverage, I said. Someone who wanted kids with me, not someone who saw kids as a project that proved his value. I rushed because the doctor said time was short and he was the one standing there with coverage and a plan. I chose motherhood first and just accepted the man attached to it. Mia finally let out a breath she had been holding. This is the first time you have said that whole sentence, she murmured. Her eyes were wet and sharp at the same time. It is brutal and it is honest, and I get why he lost it. She paused, then added, I also get why you did. I leaned my head on the steering wheel and closed my eyes. Do you think that makes me a monster? I asked. Wanting my kids with every cell in my body, but wishing I had not made the trade under those terms. She reached over and laid her hand on my shoulder. I think it makes you human and in way deeper than you ever planned, she said. Her answer did not fix anything. The prenup still existed, the job was still gone, the life was still built. He was at home, probably pacing, probably making lists of everything he had done. The twins were asleep in the house he paid for, safe and unaware. And I was in a parked car, finally saying the ugliest truth out loud. He blocked the hallway before I could reach the bedroom. Were you with her? He asked, shoulders tight, eyes bloodshot. I still had the imprint of the steering wheel on my forehead. Yeah, I answered, dropping my bag by the wall. I needed to calm down before coming back in. Did you tell her more? He asked, voice low, almost flat. More about how you settled for me because your body panicked. My fingers curled against my sides until my nails hurt. I told her the rest of that sentence, I said. The air between us shifted like someone had pulled a wire. He stared like he was checking if I would backpedal. You actually said it out loud, he murmured almost to himself. That if you were not under the gun, you would have picked another man for this job. I swallowed hard and did not answer fast enough. That pause cracked whatever was still holding. He dragged a hand over his face, then looked up. We are not drifting past this, he said, posture suddenly rigid. We either repair with real help or we dismantle this entire thing. He held up two fingers like bullet points in a meeting. Therapy or separation, and there is no third option called resentful roommate. Therapy, I blurted because the other word made my chest seize. Of course therapy, I do not want to blow everything up. His mouth twitched like he did not quite trust that. I will book someone, he said. But if you walk in there already sure I was the wrong choice, what is the point? I am not sure of anything right now, I shot back, voice shaking. I am tired and ashamed, and I hate how that sentence sounded outside my head. I also hate that I have never once been allowed to say I felt cornered without you throwing numbers at me. The words came out faster than I could filter them. He flinched like they connected. We were both cornered, he snapped, stepping closer. Your results trapped us in a narrow timeline, my paycheck was the only bridge. I did not hold a gun to your head at that altar. No, I answered, throat raw. You held my dream in your hands instead. He stared at me, breathing hard, then backed up a step. I cannot keep listening to you make me your jailer, he said, voice tired now. Book therapy, I answered. I will show up, I will listen, I will be honest. The honest part scared me more than the therapy. He nodded once like we had just signed another unseen document. I am sleeping in the guest room tonight, he added. I need space before I say something we both regret. He walked past me down the hall without touching my shoulder. The distance between us felt wider than the whole house. Much later, the place finally went quiet. The twins were out, doors cracked just enough for me to hear breathing. His door was closed, light leaking around the frame until it darkened too. I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open. The cursor blinked in an empty Reddit text box. I typed the title once, then deleted half of it. Then I wrote it again, longer this time. I told my friend I would not have chosen my husband as the father of my children if I had a normal body. Seeing it written made my stomach flip hard. It was worse and somehow also exactly right. My hands hovered above the keys. I started the post with the appointment, then the rush, then the prenup. I did not dump every detail, just enough that strangers could see the shape. I wrote about the trade, about quitting my job, about the strings. I wrote about today, my friend, and the sentence that blew the lid off. More than once I almost toned it down. I tried softer words like uncertain and complicated and mixed feelings. Every time I replaced the sharper ones, the story felt fake. So I switched them back, heart hammering as I did. If I was going to be judged, it would be for the real thing. At the end, I typed the question that had been chewing me up. Am I horrible for wishing I had chosen a different partner for fatherhood, even though I would never undo my kids? My fingers shook above the trackpad. I thought about closing the laptop, sleeping, pretending none of this had happened. Instead, I hit post and my body actually jerked like I had jumped off something. The page refreshed and there it was. My mess turned into black text on a white background. Within minutes, the first responses appeared under it. I watched the upvotes tick up like a heart monitor. My whole story in front of people who did not know my face. Some comments were exactly what I feared. You are cruel, you do not deserve your family. You used him as an ATM and now you are bored. Those ones landed, I will not lie. They sounded suspiciously like the things I already told myself at 3 in the morning. Others were blunt in a different direction. You signed under pressure, that is not real consent. You did not choose a husband, you chose a sponsor. Get your own lawyer yesterday. I read those and felt something inside me straighten a tiny bit. One comment dug under my skin more than the rest. You are allowed to love your children and hate the deal that got them here, it said. But if you stay, you cannot keep pretending you had equal power in that deal. Name it for what it was and decide what you are willing to live with. Now, I stared at that one until the words blurred. My phone buzzed on the table. New text from him. We will call a counselor tomorrow, the message read. Please do not involve more people in this, it is humiliating enough. I looked from that text to the screen full of strangers dissecting us. Humiliating. That word stuck. I had spent years swallowing humiliation in smaller bites. The medical jokes, the legal terms, the tilted choices disguised as teamwork. Now he was tasting a version of it, and I was the one who served it. I did not answer him. Instead, I opened a chat with Mia. Can we crash at your place for a night? I typed. No big explanation yet, I just need out of the house before therapy starts. Her reply popped up almost instantly. Of course, she wrote. Spare room is ready, code is the same, just come. You sure? I answered, thumb hovering. I am sure, came back, no delay, no hedge. That certainty hit me harder than any comment thread. I closed the laptop and stood up too fast. The chair scraped back and my legs wobbled. I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, pulled out a small overnight bag. I threw in basic clothes, toothbrushes, pajamas for the kids. Nothing heavy, nothing that looked like final decisions. In the guest room, I could hear him breathing on the other side of the wall. I paused in the doorway, bag in my hand. Part of me wanted to knock and ask him to come with us. Another part wanted to tiptoe past, because any conversation right now would drag me back. I chose the second part, even though it made my stomach twist. I moved down the hall to the twins' room and pushed the door open gently. They were tangled in blankets, cheeks flushed, mouths slack. My chest tightened at how small they still looked. Hey, I whispered, touching my daughter's shoulder. Wake up for a second, baby, we are going for a sleepover. She blinked up at me, confused. Now, she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Yeah, now, I said softly. Just a fun night at Mia's, then we will see what tomorrow looks like. The word tomorrow tasted like a cliff. My son rolled over, hair sticking up in every direction. Is Daddy coming? He asked, voice thick with sleep. Not tonight, I answered, throat tight. He is resting here, we are just visiting. His face crumpled for a second, then smoothed when I promised cartoons in the morning. I buckled them into their seats with shaking hands. The night outside was quiet in that heavy way. Back inside, I walked to the kitchen one more time. I set my house key on the table between the salt and a crumpled napkin. Then I carried the laptop over and opened it again. The post was still on the screen, new replies stacking at the bottom. I adjusted the angle so the title was the first thing visible. I would not have chosen my husband as the father of my children if I had a normal body. I did not know if he would read it before it got buried. I only knew that for once, the full sentence existed somewhere outside my head. For a few seconds I just stood there, fingers pressed to the edge of the table. This was not a grand escape, it was one night away with 2 sleepy kids and a borrowed bed. The prenup still sat in a drawer, the counselor's number still needed to be found, the marriage was not over. But my feet were pointed toward a door I had never let myself touch. I turned, walked out, and did not look back until I was in the driver's seat. In the car, the kids already dozing again, my phone buzzed once more. Another text from him, unread, sitting above a flood of Reddit notifications. My thumb hovered, caught between his name and the app icon. For the first time in years, I did not answer him first. I started the engine and pulled away, with my own choice finally in motion.